Welcome to Rad Flicks. My name is Joe. These are just opinions. I am Joepinionated. Today on Rad Flicks, some movies that didn't make the cut for 1980 for Action Sci-Fi Adventure. Number one is Altered States. That's with William Hurt, directed by Ken Russell. Another action adventure that didn't quite make the final cut, got voted into this, was The Blues Brothers again. The last one, we're going with a ninja movie, Return to the 36th Chamber. I think that's the one featured at the start of Jizza and Genius Liquid Swords. That one goes out to Joe. Third place for 1980 action adventure sci-fi goes to the action adventure that you've probably watched 100 times on TV, starring Sally Field and Burt Reynolds. Smokey and the Bandit comes in at number 3 for the raddest action adventure sci-fi for 1980. Number 2 for 1980 is Superman 2. This one, Lois Lane kind of figures out what's going on. Superman takes her back to his home planet. I just remember the special effects in this seems so awesome when I was a kid. I have watched it recently, and yeah, this one does stand the test of time. It's a cool movie. It's Superman 2, Christopher Reeves, rest in peace. He's close with Robin Williams, so what does that tell you? He's awesome. This movie is definitely certified rad. Number 2, greatest action sci-fi adventure movie of 1980. Number 1 for action sci-fi adventure for 1980. It's with a bullet. I think it was straight across the board. Smokey and the Bandit did get one first place finish. The rest of it across the board goes to Star Wars. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Grew up Star Wars nut. Loved Star Wars as a child, and I still love the original trilogy. A New Hope through to Return of the Jedi. This one's in the middle. Spoiler alert, the bad guys win. I was honestly a Star Wars nerd until the Phantom Menace and all that stuff came out. Easily the raddest sci-fi movie of 1980. This movie kills. It's great. It's a rad flick, and it didn't win Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and it should have. It's better than whatever the ordinary people. I'll tell you that much right now. Raddest action sci-fi adventure movie in 1981, voted on by our panel of 6 normal people. Some movies that didn't make the top 3 include John Carpenter's Escape from New York, starring Kurt Russell. Third place for action adventure. This is definitely an adventure movie. Time Bandits, directed by Terry Gilliam, former Monty Python. What can I say? Terry Gilliam directed some of the best movies of all time. This one obviously stars a few of them. There's Michael Palin. Wacky, weird, wild adventure, unconventional. Kind of artsy-fartsy, to be honest with you. But this one's so rad, it has to make the list. Mad Max Part 2, The Road Warrior, starring Mel Gibson, directed by George Miller. Mad Max in this one protects a group of survivors from ruthless marauders in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Mel Gibson and so many exceptional action movies, especially in the 80s. This one's probably my favorite, honestly. I love Road Warrior. Raddest action adventure sci-fi. This one falls under action and adventure of 1981. Goes to Steven Spielberg's and George Lucas collaboration on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones. Karen Allen, Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. This movie has led to 4 sequels now and countless other series and movies trying to be like it. Nothing is like this. Indiana Jones in a category of its own. All 3 Indiana Jones, the original trilogy, in my mind, are perfect. They're great movies. The raddest action adventure movie of 1981 is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raddest action sci-fi and adventure movie from 1982. Some honorable mentions, some ones that didn't make the final 3. So the max we could have in the finals is 3 for the way that we've voted on these movies. Ones that didn't make the final 3 are E.T., directed by Steven Spielberg, 1982. The Thing did not make the final 3, even though it got a couple of high votes. 48 Hours did not make the final 3. And Rocky 3 did not make the final 3. In third place, third raddest action, adventure, sci-fi movie of 1982 goes to Conan the Barbarian, featuring Arnie. I like it. It's a solid pick. It's a rad flick. It stood the test of time. All right. Props to Conan the Barbarian. Runner up for best action movie 1982, sci-fi adventure, goes to this beauty behind me. It's Sly Stallone's Rambo. First Blood. Rambo was filmed in the province I'm living in, British Columbia, and Hope, BC. The big downtown scene. If you're one of those people who likes to check out movie sites, I totally do. Hope, BC is where you'll find most of this movie. Number 1 for sci-fi adventure action movies, 1982, we're going with Blade Runner. Rutger Hauer, Harrison Ford, and directed by Ridley Scott. A classic to this day, one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made, actually. It's got to be in the top 10 list. Great vision. Ridley Scott. I mean, he's Ridley Scott. He made Alien. What else do you need? This guy was on top of his game, 1982. Raddest science fiction movie of 1982, Blade Runner. Next category is science fiction, action, adventure. Some honorable mentions: Lone Wolf McQuade, Brian De Palma and Al Pacino, Scarface, Superman 3. Get into the top 3 for raddest sci-fi adventure action movies of 1983, according to the panel of normal Canadians, 6 of us. Number 3, raddest action movie of 1983 goes to Clint Eastwood, or aka Dirty Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry's Sudden Impact. I love the Dirty Harry series. Start to finish, all 5 of them. Watched them plenty. This is one of the better ones for me anyways. I liked this one, the first one, and the Deadpool the most. After that, Magnum Force is pretty cool too. My least favorite is probably the Enforcer. On to number 2 for raddest action sci-fi, 1983. In second, we get a James Bond movie, a Roger Moore installment from 1983. It's Octopussy. I'm not a James Bond expert. They all kind of like mold into one for me. Like watching the trailers even kind of helps me remember which one's which. I didn't grow up with James Bond. Quite a few people on the panel definitely did. So let's be honest with you there. But yeah, Octopussy, number 2. Number 1, action sci-fi adventure movie, 1983, goes to Star Wars Return of the Jedi. This is the final movie in the original trilogy. Could you imagine if they just left it at these 3 movies? I didn't mind the second trilogy, the prequel. The third trilogy even started off okay, but the last one was just so awful, and I gave up. That's it. I'm not watching anymore. Let's just pretend that the first 3 were the only 3. I was a huge Star Wars nut. I still have like old cereal boxes and stuff like that stashed away. Like, I love Star Wars. I have Star Wars scripts, Star Wars mugs. I knew like Cliff from Cheers was in Empire Strikes Back. Like, I knew anything I could figure out Star Wars for sure. And I've definitely seen this movie a bunch of times. It was my favorite Star Wars movie at one point when I was a kid. It's unbelievable. Jabba the Hutt. Yeah, it's just sleeker. I just like the way that Luke Skywalker, he just looks, he's badass. He's a Jedi Knight in this one. Top sci-fi action of 1983. I think that's pretty straightforward. Next category is action sci-fi adventure. Runner-ups in action sci-fi adventure include The Ghostbusters, again, The Last Starfighter, Romancing the Stone, that's kind of an adventure, Beverly Hills Cop, it's an action, Red Dawn gets a shout out, there you go, the first PG movie ever. PG-13, sorry, ever. The finalists for action sci-fi adventure. Number 3, action sci-fi adventure, 1984, goes to Conan the Destroyer, the follow-up to Conan the Barbarian. My favorite Conan has to be Weird Al's take in UHF, Conan the Librarian. Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System? Conan was a pretty big deal amongst the panel of normal Canadians. The number 2 pick for Rad Flicks action sci-fi adventure goes to sci-fi master James Cameron's vision for The Terminator. This is the original one, also starring Linda Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've seen Terminator 2 probably like 500 times. I've seen Terminator 1 the whole way through probably twice, I want to say. So not even close. When I was kind of getting into movies, Terminator 2 was already a thing. Very few movies are cooler. This is certified Rad Flick without question. And the winner goes to raddest action sci-fi adventure from 1984 has got to go to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Kaliman. He no nuts. He's crazy. I love the short round. Just won best actor. Maybe that was best supporting actor for Everywhere, Everything, All at Once. Give a shout out. I think he gave a shout out to Harrison Ford because Harrison Ford and Spielberg, basically discovered him, and this was his first big role. And he followed this up with Goonies the following year. And trust me, that's going to come up on the list for 1985, one of my favorite movies of all time. Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom is close. It's definitely one of my most watched movies of all time, for sure. I had this one on VHS at a young age. Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom. Next category is action sci-fi adventure from director Mark L. Lester. The movie is Commando, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. I haven't seen this movie in so long. You couldn't get more guns on Arnold if you tried. I'm pretty sure this is like his record for most guns held in the same at the same time. He had a gun with a grenade launcher in the bottom. You remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last? I lied. The trailers for some of these action ones, you get that voice where it sounds like Pablo Francisco doing the fake movie guy's voice. Next nominee for Action Sci-Fi Adventure goes to the follow-up to Romancing the Stone, once again starring Michael Douglas and Danny DeVito and Kathleen Turner. It's Jewel of the Nile. This time they're romancing a brand new stone, the Jewel of the Nile. 1985 Rad Flicks nominee for Action Sci-Fi Adventure. Robert Zemeckis directed Back to the Future, starring Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd. Done a Robert Zemeckis episode on this channel. Few movies mean more to me, honestly. It's one of the best movies ever made, one of the greatest movies of the 80s. When we do our 80s wrap up, this one will definitely be coming up again. It's one of the very few movies that does time travel well, and time travel is like kind of a hard thing to do in a movie. For some reason, it works in this one. And Robert Zemeckis has a way of that kind of magic, is making you stretching the imagination or just kind of bending reality. George P. Cosmatos directed Rambo First Blood Part 2. Once again, you think that you thought Arnie had a lot of guns on him in Rambo or in Commando. Wait till you check out this guy, Sly Stallone in Rambo 2. Channeling Bronson in this one. It's him versus an army. Rambo 2. So in this category, we also get a shout out for Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Terry Gilliam movies are often considered an adventure movie, a lot of these ones anyways. The world had been through a trial by fire, and only the greatest warriors survived. From George Miller, George Ogilvy, it's Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome. He was the one they called Mad. First of all, Tina Turner owns in this show, so I want to give props to Tina Turner for really making her part work. The whole cage match scene, the Thunderdome and stuff like that is pretty amazing when you're a little kid and you see this stuff. I really liked Mad Max when I was a kid. So yeah, anyways, props to Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome. My favorite was The Road Warrior, but I probably saw Beyond Thunderdome the most just because it was that cool element and everybody knew it was cool. Next, finalist for Action Sci-Fi Adventure goes to Tom Cruise and Legend. This is such a cool kind of, labyrinth style, mystical, weird movie with unicorns and all kinds of crap. And this is just before Tom Cruise did Top Gun. Next up, we got our second James Bond nominee or finalist. It's A View to Kill, directed by John Glenn. This one has Christopher Walken with Roger Moore. A View to Kill is one of the best, honestly. I love Christopher Walken. And the last finalist from Action Adventure Legend Extraordinaire, Jackie Chan, we have Police Story from 1985. Now, if you haven't watched the old Jackie Chan movies like Police Story and Drunken Master and Super Cop, you really should. Jackie Chan was the man living in Hong Kong making these movies, and that guy did all those stunts. Every single one of them just makes me cringe, but it's so much fun to watch because Jackie Chan's going to live. So just keep that in mind. He lived. And the winner of Raddest Action Adventure Sci-Fi 1985 goes to Back to the Future. Was there ever a doubt? Second Raddest Action Adventure movie of 1985 goes to Commando. Third place for 1985's Raddest Action Adventure Sci-Fi goes to Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Next category is Action Sci-Fi Adventure Raddest for 1986. And the finalists are Cobra. Sly Stallone mentioned here for Cobra 1986. We've got The Golden Child starring Eddie Murphy. I remember watching this one quite a bit. I think I had it on cassette. I think I recorded it, The Golden Child. And just because it was Eddie Murphy at the time, I was definitely in an Eddie Murphy kick. Next finalist is Big Trouble, Little China. Yeah, director John Carpenter, starring Kurt Russell and Kim Cattrall. So Kim Cattrall, she's in a lot of movies so far on Rad Flicks. Certified Rad. Kim Cattrall certified Rad. Around My House, very famous for Sex in the City. Got roped into a Sex in the City tour in New York City. My first day in New York City, actually, my partner on a Sex in the City tour because she was such a big fan. On the tour, ran into Paul Pfeiffer from one of my favorite shows, The Wonder Years. So that was dope. Anyways, shout out to Kim Cattrall. You're awesome. You're rad. You're in Big Trouble Little China, which is just a phenomenal action sci-fi movie. So definitely in the finals here. Top Gun. Top Gun finishes action. I mean, that's just an action super film. Tom Cruise. This is the one that kind of blew him up into a huge action star. Next up, Action Sci-Fi Adventure, Raddest Movies of 1986 finalist, Platoon. It's a drama. I mean, there's definitely action. It's a war movie. It's so yeah. So I guess later on, like Saving Private Ryan is something sort of similar to this, where yes, there are some action scenes. That's why we've got this amazing panel of normal people. Next finalist is from James Cameron. It's Aliens, the sequel to Alien we talked about earlier. Next finalist, Action Sci-Fi Adventure Transformers, the movie. 1986. I actually forgot about that one. Next finalist for Action Sci-Fi Adventure. What the fuck, Ian? Maximum Overdrive. Maximum Overdrive was much more appreciated than I ever realized. Anyway, hey, there you go. Stephen King got a raddest action sci-fi. We also get Highlander. Highlander makes the finals for raddest movie, raddest sci-fi action adventure 1986. Labyrinth. I mean, George Lucas, Jim Henson, David Bowie. Labyrinth is such a quirky 80s experiment. I love it. I love anything Jim Henson is certified rad. We've mentioned that earlier on in this series. You throw in George Lucas in there. George Lucas, who's been all over the Rad Flicks list so far with Indiana Jones and the Star Wars trilogy, the original. The winner for raddest action adventure sci-fi 1986 goes to raddest action sci-fi adventure movie of 1986 is James Cameron's Aliens. Second raddest action sci-fi adventure movie 1986 goes to Big Trouble Little China from John Carpenter, and one of my very favorite John Carpenter movies. And I mean, I don't think that's a very uncommon answer to that question. And third, it goes to Top Gun, Tom Cruise, Top Gun. Next category is raddest action adventure sci-fi for 1987. The nominees are The Witches of Eastwick. This one starring Jack Nicholson and Cher. Gonna be honest with you, I've never seen it, but that one makes the finals for Rad Flicks. We're just normal people around here. We didn't waste our lives by watching absolutely every single movie. We had to, go to work and shit like that. And then trying to stop you from wasting your life checking out all the crap that critics told you to like, and just check out Rad Flicks. Save yourself some time. You're welcome. Next movie, Rad Flicks, raddest action sci-fi adventure goes to The Untouchables, Brian De Palma. That's Sean Connery, Robert De Niro, Kevin Costner. The Untouchables. Directed by Paul Michael Glazer, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's The Running Man and Maria Alonso. Also, this is written by Stephen King. Watched this one quite a few times. Still love it. It's a reality show where prisoners can earn their freedom, have to go through a gauntlet. Awesome stuff. Next, for action sci-fi adventure, Spaceballs, Mel Brooks, starring Rick Moranis. John Candy, director of Goonies, goes on to direct 1987's Lethal Weapon, Richard Donner, starring Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. Buddy cop movies of the 80s. It's Lethal Weapon, Killer series, the first installment of many. Director John McTiernan brings us the next Arnold Schwarzenegger installment. This time it's Predator. Predator from 1987. Jesse the Body Ventura is who I always think of. Carl Weathers, rest in peace. He just passed away. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Carl Weathers, sorry. Chubbs from Happy Gilmore. Predator. Predator is awesome. Up next, action sci-fi adventure. This one checks all boxes. We're going RoboCop. It's another dystopic Detroit movie, crime-ridden Detroit. I just remember this movie being insanely violent. It was always sort of cool for people my age because I was just too young to watch it. Final finalist for action sci-fi adventure for 1987 goes to Beverly Hills Cop 2, and the winner of raddest action sci-fi adventure for 1987 goes to Predator. Arnold Schwarzenegger, first overall for 3 raddest action sci-fi adventure movies of 1988. The finalists are Midnight Run, director Martin Brest, co-stars Charles Grodin and Robert De Niro. He's got to get this guy across the country for a bounty to be paid. Next up, directed by Robert Zemeckis, is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Bob Hoskins, Christopher Lloyd. This is really a director's showcase. It's Zemeckis piecing together a movie where humans and cartoons can interact and it looks right. Cult classic. Come to the coast, we'll have some laughs. Die Hard, directed by John McTiernan, starring Alan Rickman, Bruce Willis, John McClane, just trying to hang out with this, separated partner, Holly Gennaro, in a Nakatomi Tower, possibly the greatest action movie of all time, even arguably one of the raddest Christmas movies. Check out my Christmas movie episode called the Christmas Movie Marathon on this channel. Doesn't get much better than this. One of the best movies ever. Next one, Lou Diamond Phillips, Emilio Estevez, Kiefer Sutherland, Young Guns, story of Billy the Kid. Up next, starring Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis, is Ron Howard's Willow. Cool movie. It reminds me a bit of Terry Gilliam, Dark Crystal, Jim Henson, that stuff. It's great. I can't believe this came out in 1988. I thought it came out a little bit earlier than that. These 80s adventure movies are just so cool, and they just really don't exist after the 80s. John Carpenter again with They Live comes in for action, adventure, sci-fi. Above the Law, starring Steven Seagal. So that would have been the first big one for him. Directed by Newt Arnold, the finalist for raddest action adventure sci-fi of 1988 goes to the movie with Frank Dukes, Bloodsport. Bolo Yeung as Chong Li. Jean-Claude Van Damme as Frank Dukes, the Kumite. This was about as cool as fighting movies came. Him being blinded and trying to look around. All the different martial arts styles. Pretty badass if you were a kid in the 80s. You know Bloodsport, no question. And the winner for 1988's raddest action sci-fi adventure goes to Die Hard. Bruce Willis, Die Hard, raddest action movie of 1988. Maybe the raddest action movie of all time. Is it a Christmas movie? Isn't it? Well, it's on my Christmas movie marathon, so that tells you my thoughts. For the longest time, I thought it wasn't. Tied for second, Bloodsport and Willow. Going into action sci-fi. The finalists are Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. This one's directed by Steven Spielberg. In the last installment, you get Indiana's dad, played by Sean Connery, and Harrison Ford playing his role as Indiana Jones. The Last Crusade. These movies are all perfect. Indiana Jones 1, 2, and 3, the original trilogy. When I was a kid, there's arguments about what the best trilogy was. Some people would throw Aliens into that. It was normally between Star Wars, Back to the Future, and Indiana Jones. Finalist for raddest action sci-fi adventure goes to Roadhouse, starring Patrick Swayze. There's actually a remake coming out this summer. We're looking forward to that one. Finalist for action sci-fi adventure, starring Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton in Tim Burton's Batman. Check out the Tim Burton episode on this channel. Check out the Jack Nicholson episode on this channel as well, where I do the top 10 films for both of them. Next up, action adventure for 1989, Kickboxer, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. I just remember those gloves where they put him into, was it into glue or wax or something like that, and then covered in broken glass and fight with broken glass on their wrist wraps. Kickboxer. Haven't seen that one since I was a little guy. I remember the bad guy had like that bad ponytail going on. Next, directed by Richard Donner. He's back again. Lethal Weapon 2 with Mel Gibson. And with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, I think this is one where Joe Pesci comes into the story. Nobody better to add than Joe Pesci. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure for finalist for action adventure sci-fi raddest. 1989 also brings us Back to the Future Part 2. Back to the Future 2 come up before on these lists as well. Nothing cooler than Back to the Future 2, especially in 1989. We talked about this movie, through my entire upbringing, just about what was going to come true, what wasn't from Back to the Future 2. We didn't get the flying cars. The Cubbies did win the World Series. Florida did have a baseball team. Mind-blowing movie. If you didn't own it, then you rented it all the time. Another one where just a wall at the video store was all Back to the Future 2, and they were all rented. I remember seeing it in the theater, and I remember at the end of it, they had the preview for Back to the Future 3, and that was the first time I ever remember seeing that in a movie. And the raddest action adventure sci-fi movie of 1989 goes to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, raddest action adventure sci-fi movie of 1989. Directed by Steven Spielberg. He's got all kinds of rad flicks through the 80s, so why not cap it off with this beauty? Such a great movie. So easy to watch. This one and Raiders are probably the easiest to watch. I definitely watched the middle one, Temple of Doom, the most as a kid. I love Short Round. Love Data from the Goonies. Runner-up for raddest action adventure sci-fi for 1989 goes to Tim Burton's Batman. And in third place goes to Jean-Claude Van Damme's Kickboxer. So there you have it. The 1980s wrapped up. That's 1989. We've gone all the way from 1980 to 1989 in a short period of time. I want to thank our panel of normal Canadians, all 6 of you. Sure to like, comment, subscribe. Put your opinions in the description below. I'd love to talk to you there's a Discord created for Joepinionated. Look it up. Patreon as well. Check me out on all socials. I'm always posting every record that we're listening to around the house. The 90s coming up next. Also some deep dives into some musicians such as the Tragically Hip and Ween. I know you might have noticed the Ween Quebec on my shirt here. I'm a big time fan of Ween. Going to do a deep dive for those guys soon as well. I'm sorry, I'm a little low on facts and high on opinions.